I had been ordained a priest for a little over a year, and I was at my first assignment, priesthood assignment. It was a very large church in San Mateo called St. Matthew's Church. And it's very similar here to Our Lady of Loretto in terms of they had a very large English community and a large Spanish community. This particular Saturday was a busy day. I began the day with having to celebrate daily Mass in the morning. Then after that, I had to work on my homily. Then after that, in the early afternoon, I had a quinceañera Mass. And then also, I was chaplain at Serra High School there in San Mateo. So I had to go over to Serra High School and do a presentation. And then after that, I had to come back to the parish and spend over an hour in confessions. And then after that, I had to celebrate the big 7 p.m. Spanish Mass. I celebrated that Mass. However, and you'll notice this if you ever go to a Spanish Mass, after the Mass, a lot of people want to talk to the priest. In fact, they line up to talk to the priest, and they want to talk to the priest about problems they're having, questions they have. They want blessings. They want blessings for themselves. They want blessings for items. They want blessings for their cars. So all this takes time, and so I had to be there for that. It took about 45 minutes. But then finally, at about 9 o'clock in the evening, I was done. So I went to the sacristy. Well, I kind of really staggered into the sacristy because I was just really so drained. It was just such a long day. And I was about to take off my vestments and finally have dinner when a gentleman appears in the doorway of the sacristy. And he's a Hispanic gentleman, and he is anguished. Father, I just had this argument with my son, and he's about to leave home. I need to talk to someone. I need to talk to you. And I look back at him, and I'm just so incredibly tired. I just don't have anything to give. And I say, I'm sorry, sir. I just haven't got the time. And this gentleman just glares at me. Oh, you haven't got the time. And then he turns around and just stalks out. And believe me, I feel like crap at that time. I really do. But I don't have anything to give at that moment. It was one of the lowest moments of my priesthood, and I just felt crushed. But the energy just simply wasn't there to give anything. And believe it or not, this day that I'm describing is just typical of how it was for me in the early days of my priesthood. That day that I experienced was how I experience most days. Jesus in his wisdom had called me to the priesthood. But after about a year in the priesthood, it was obvious that something wasn't working because I was just feeling, as I said, I was just feeling so crushed, and I was on the very edge of burnout. But Jesus in his wisdom had also given me a gift. He had given me the gift of devotion to God. And even before I entered the priesthood, before I made the commitment to enter seminary, I made the commitment to God that I would try my best, that I would just give it my all. And this was proving it right here. And part of this gift of the devotion to the priesthood that Jesus gave me was, he gave me the discipline of daily prayer. And at this time, 2 prayers are just really essential for me. The Rosary and Holy Hour, spending an hour in front of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. And in my first 2 years of priesthood, I took full advantage of that. In fact, in front of the Blessed Sacrament, I would just pour my heart out to Jesus. Jesus, something isn't working here. I feel so drained. Jesus, you need to help me. You need to guide me. And fortunately, Jesus heard my prayers. He did help me. He did guide me, thanks be to God. Now, it didn't happen overnight, nor even did it happen over a course of several months. No, it was a process that took several years. But Jesus was there. He was able to help me, guide me, to move me forward to being able to do this priesthood vocation, this parish priesthood vocation. And essentially, what Jesus taught me was some basic managerial skills. He taught me to set boundaries, to say no to people, time management, setting priorities. But the most important thing that Jesus taught me was the capacity to have the pastoral skills to be able to help people when they came to me. This was a skill that I had to develop. But all of this came about because I had the devotion to God. God demands devotion. In the first reading from Exodus, we hear the first commandment. And in the first commandment, God uses a very provocative word to describe himself. I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Jealous. What a word. But it describes God because God is jealous. He is possessive. He is possessive of us, and he wants us. He wants us completely. He wants to possess us completely. And on our end, what we have to do is we have to give him complete commitment, complete time, and complete devotion. The role model for this, the role model of devotion to God is Jesus. Because, of course, Jesus is devoted to God the Father. And in the gospel today, he shows how this works. Because in the gospel today, Jesus is in Jerusalem. And it's the Passover. And of course, Jesus during the Passover is going to go to the temple. And he goes to the temple, but he comes to the portico of the temple. The portico is the outside of the temple. And there he sees the merchant selling the sacrificial animals. He sees the money changers there. And per se, there's nothing really wrong with having the merchants there or the money changers. But the issue is that they are overcharging. I mean, completely overcharging, taking advantage of the poor and vulnerable going into the temple for Passover. And Jesus gets angry. He gets angry that they're making his Father's house a den of thieves, a marketplace, a place of larceny. And so Jesus grabs a whip of cords and he drives them out of the marketplace. Jesus is showing his zeal for the love of his Father. He is showing us complete devotion to his Father. How do we acquire this deep devotion to God, what he's asking of us? What are the ways that we do this? Well, the most powerful way, and it's probably the most common sense way, and the foundational way, is the commitment to prayer. That certainly is what helped me. Those two prayers of the Rosary and spending an hour in front of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. But what are other ways that we can do this? Fortunately, this Lent season lends itself naturally to us spending meditative time in prayer and taking a time out and just spending time alone with God. Spending time alone with God means that then we can make that commitment to God. We can make that commitment to God to do our best, to trust Him, to really just devote ourselves to Him. And if we do this, if we're able to make this commitment to God, what we find is that this great God, this jealous God, this possessive God, will then embrace us, and He will give us so many blessings in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.